You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
I've been reading the letters of Oscar Hammerstein III, and I thought I'd share with you one from 1939. It's about somebody goes into an old English pub, and the landlord says, "We're having a raffle here this weekend. Why don't you buy a ticket? It's only sixpence." So he hands over his sixpence and he gets a ticket. Following day, he comes to the pub, and the landlord says, "Oh, yes, you bought a ticket for the raffle, didn't you? Yes. You've won second prize." He said, "Oh, really? What's second prize?" He said, "You get to sleep with all the barmaids." So he thinks for a while, and then he turns to the landlord and says, "And what about first prize?" He said, "Oh, you got a packet of cigarettes." So anyway,
that's actually just, it kind of gets better and better, doesn't it? It's so unkind.
It is one of those jokes that you know 2 days later you're on a tube train and you're on your own. You suddenly just smile. You start thinking about it. You know. Anyway, Stackwaddy game. Stackwaddy game sent in by listener Stuart Penny.
I know Stuart Penny. We know Stuart Penny. Yes,
we know Stuart
Thank
Penny.
you, Stuart.
He sent 10 song titles, but I've actually abbreviated this.
Yeah.
Stuart, I hope you'll forgive. Okay, 5 song titles. Okay. 4 of them are by Frank Zappa. One is by Abba. Okay.
Okay, this is good.
4 of them by Frank Zappa, 1 by Abba. Okay, here we go. Do not try this at home. Filthy habits. While you're out, keep an eye on Dan.
What was the third one? While you were out.
While you're out, keep an eye on Dan, and welcome to the United States. Do not try this at home, filthy habits. While you're out, keep an eye on Dan, and welcome to the United States. 4 of those are Frank Zappa. 1 is by Abba. Which one's by Abba?
Keep an eye on Dan. Clearly, it's a Frank Zappa song. There is absolutely no way Abba would record a song with that title. You'd have to say the same for Filthy Habits. You'd have to say he would have recorded a song called Welcome to the USA, because it would have been sarcastic, and Abba would never have done that. Filthy Habits, so we're left with 2, aren't they? Do not try this at home, is that right?
Yeah.
And while you were out. I guess Don't Try This at Home is Frank Zappa as well. It must be While You Were Out as the Abba one.
Well, you're completely wrong, because the Abba one is Keep an Eye on Dan, the one that you were first to dismiss. It's a tune from their most recent album. There you are. Keep an eye on Dan.
That's very good. I was completely, as Danny Kelly, our old pal, used to say, I was fished in and I was doing sit-ups on the bank with a hook in my mouth. That's really good, Stuart. Very good work. You win.
Well done, Stuart Penny. If anybody else would like to challenge either of us with a Stackwaddy game, the usual address, whatever that is.
The Word Podcast. Prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
I was looking at a load of new LP sleeves, album sleeves, if we can call them album sleeves, because of course the place I'm looking at them is on a streaming service where you see, here are a load of newly released LPs which you can stream or whatever. I suppose if you are sufficiently bothered, you could go and buy them, but here they are, you could stream them. And it struck me that the kind of standard of kind of images that are presented to accompany long-playing records nowadays slightly defy you to take any interest in the records at all. They're all sort of edgy, harsh.
Yes.
Hardly any of them
unwelcoming.
They are. Hardly any of them have got pictures of the artists on the front. They're
kind of mood. They're mood setters, aren't they?
They're ghoulish photographs of babies.
And
things like that, and strange graphics and images that you can't tell whether they were taken now or they were taken in the 70s. They're all vaguely chilling. And it just struck me that I know they're not trying to do what an album sleeve traditionally did, which was get you to reach for it, really, didn't it? That was the main job, first of all, in a shop, was to get you attracted to go across and look at the rack and then pick up, and we're talking about 12-inch LP back in the day. But even the same thing applied.
If you walked into a shop and you saw In the Court of the Crimson King, you couldn't possibly not pick it up, actually, just out of curiosity.
And it struck me that the whole pairing of graphics with sound was so much a part of the record business for years. I think I've remarked on this in the past. The record business was a branch of the packaged goods business. It was, let's take the sound and let's put it in this kind of box
and try and
we'll make it look like this so that people will reach for it and they'll want it. And that's clearly just gone away altogether. And it struck me that, it's one of those things that you don't really miss until it's gone. And it reminded me of how important, and not just the extreme cases like In the Court of the Crimson King, although that's a perfectly good example, but just even more kind of mild, more middle-of-the-road things. The idea of accompanying these things with a picture was so much a part of getting you to form some attraction, some kind of a link with the music.
Yeah.
It was visuals that made you do it, and it's gone. It's just completely gone away.
You're right. They just tend to be statements about this is how we identify, isn't it? We're harsh, we're brutal, we're disenfranchised.
And I wanted to try this on you, okay, because I was looking at a load of album covers yesterday, having thought this, and I wasn't even looking at 12-inch LPs. I have in front of me, Mark Allan,
go on,
a CD, which you can't see.
Right.
And I'm going to describe to you the picture on the front of the CD. And anybody can try this at home and see if you're going to be able to tell me what the CD is.
All right, no clues, just straight in.
No clues. And so the picture is of a man walking down a sunlit city street. And you can't see who the man is, although I think I might be able to guess. And he's wearing a white flat cap, and he's got a cigarette in his mouth, and he's just walking towards you down this very brightly sunlit street. So you see the dark shadows, and then you see the bright strip of the figure in the sunlight. And I think this image, which was actually taken by the wife of one of the musicians and was put on the cover of this record, and it's a record everybody knows, and probably quite a lot of people listening to this podcast have got. And I think this image, although it's not a kind of award winner or anything like that, I think it was hugely important in just convincing people to give this music a try, because this music was made by people they'd never heard of, okay? You wouldn't have heard them at all, but it ended up doing very well indeed. Would you like to take a guess, Mark Allan?
I'm flummoxed by this, but I feel it's a 1970s record.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's a CD I've got in front of me. Shall I tell you what it is?
Yeah, go on.
It is the Buena Vista Social Club.
Oh, Lord, yes. Actually, I have got that.
Of course.
No, I've never taken that in, of course. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's Ibrahim Ferreira. I think it probably is.
I think it is, yeah. I saw him twice.
Walking down the street there. And it's just that image, just makes you want to be.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And it instantly makes you convinced about the music inside.
Yeah.
And I just think that's been such a powerful part of the music mix for years, and it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, was it just a mood setter, isn't it? Just
but it also, it's not just a mood setter. It makes you, you subliminally take in loads of things. You go, Havana, old cars,
yeah,
sunlight, old chaps who've spent
Black and white picture, old
No,
geezers.
it's not black and white picture. Colour picture.
Oh, it's not. It's colour picture. Okay.
It's taken by Susan Titleman, who's Ry Cooder's wife.
Oh, yeah.
Who was taking...
Yeah, the car, everything.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fantastic.
The cars on the back, the old huge American cars.
Yeah.
Rattling around Havana. And it just made you think, I want to be there. I want to
That's
be
wonderful.
in that music. And I think it was a really interesting example. Have you got an example?
I was looking at some records this morning, and because we've been talking about this idea of records that kind of where the sell is over 50%, really over 50% of the sell is the cover. And I did find one, and I think it fits because it's a record that when it came out, everybody talked about it, and it spread way beyond the constituency of the act. So it's part outdoors and part indoors, the cover, right? And there's various visible things on the sleeve. There's some flared trousers, there's some trees, there's a patterned carpet, there's a large glass container, there's a black felt hat, there's a pink T-shirt, there's the band's name in actual letters.
Oh, God, yeah.
And the main hook is that there are several pictures of the members of the group with all the same elements, but there's a key difference in each one.
Oh, God. I'm gonna have a wild guess.
No, go on, but I can give you some more clues if you want. Yeah, go on.
Is it Pink Floyd?
Yes, it is.
Is it Omagoma?
It's Omagoma. Very good. That's very good.
But Omagoma was a classic case of a record that you spend hours in a record shop looking at.
Yeah.
Whether you bought it or not. It was
completely.
And Omagoma, I discovered recently, it's a Hypnosis cover, isn't it? I think it was. But it was,
and on the back is all the gear. Do you remember?
On the back, we'll come to the back in a moment.
Yeah.
But I think the cover was shot in the home of a sister of, I think, Roger Waters' sister in Cambridge. And so the idea that in the early days of big cover designs, nobody had a budget to go and rent some enormous great property. You just said, my sister will lend us
She's got a nice
house.
place. She's got a nice garden.
We'll go and take it over for the afternoon.
Yeah.
I think that's what they did. Of course, on the back of it, you have the picture of the two Pink Floyd road crew.
With the gear.
Gear.
We used to just pore over this for hours. I think it was taken in an airdrome.
It was taken at Biggin Hill.
Biggin Hill, that's right.
And the two roadies, one of them is Peter Watts, who's the father, the now late father, of the actress Naomi Watts.
Yeah.
Who was as one of the original road crew. But yes, that's a case of something very ornate and very attention-getting.
Yes, it's really just there to make you just stop in your tracks, you know, and it doesn't necessarily create a mood for the album, but it's still one of those fantastic records that you could just, it always seems attractive.
Yeah. So, records that you've bought because of the cover, not necessarily anything really outlandish or really provocative, just things where you've realised in retrospect that so much of your impulse to buy it was visually driven. It's just, I want that. I want to take that home. I want to take it home on the tube or the bus. Or
Can you think of some you bought?
Oh, well, loads of things, Little Feat albums, things like that, they were, the visuals of the thing were just hugely important part of it, because I suppose Little Feat, like Pink Floyd, were associated with Hypnosis. Little Feat were associated with Neon Park, who was the guy who did all their album covers, So it was...
Well, the Cake on the Swing. Unbelievable.
The Cake on the Swing, which, of course, is based on
a famous painting.
It's based upon is it Fragonard? I think it's Fragonard. Yeah. And who was the French 18th century painter, I suppose, who famously used to paint ladies on swings.
That's right.
And, well, that's what the cake on the swing is supposed to be. And if you look at the original Fragonard painting, I think it's Fragonard, yeah, it is. Fragonard painting, there's a kind of a bow down in the corner looking up at the girl on the swing. And if you look at the Little Feet cover, I think you've got a snail in the corner. That's right. Looking at the cake on the
Something
swing.
faintly erotic about it too.
Oh, definitely. If you look at the original painting, definitely erotic.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Do you know who was the big expert in the paintings of Fragonard? Anthony Blunt.
Oh, really?
I think he was. I think he was the world authority.
His sideline. How amazing.
All this and education too.
The Word Podcast. 2 cocoa tins and a piece of string.
So Jet Black.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful fellow who I can remember meeting once. And, has passed away. And there were only 2 things you ever knew about Jet Black back in the day. One
Can I
was...
put my hand up and guess one?
Yeah, go on. Guess.
Does it involve an ice cream van?
Yes, he does. He owns an ice cream van and an off licence, actually. He owned a fleet of ice cream vans and I think it owned an off licence. The other thing was that you were told he was quite old, weren't you?
Yeah.
You never knew how old. And I have to say, I'm kind of amazed to find out how old he really, really was.
So how old was he?
Well, he was born in 1938. Now, that is old. So he was 84 years old when he died, which was yesterday. We're recording the day after. And that makes him only 5 years younger than Willie Nelson, just to put it into perspective.
Yeah.
And it also makes him older than all the Beatles, and apart from Bill Wyman, who was born, I think, in 1936, all the Stones. And the real old punk rocker was meant to be Charlie Harper, wasn't it? Charlie Harper, the UK subs, was, he was born in 1944, so he was pretty ancient. But in 1977, just to put it into perspective, when the Stranglers were just taking off, and I can remember going to see them at the Roundhouse, Jet was 39 years old.
Wow.
And it's incredible, isn't it?
That was old in those days.
39 years old. Dave Greenfield, so he was 40 when they were having all their big all over that. Dave Greenfield was 33. Hugh Cornwell was 28. And Jean-Jacques Bernal was 25. And I can remember Bob Geldof, even Bob Geldof thought I was being too old, wasn't he? He was 26 in 1977. Yeah. So this is a totally different generation. This is a guy who was, whatever he was, 16 when the first Elvis Presley single came out, was a hit. I mean, that's amazing, don't you think? It's just extraordinary. And it struck me also that there can't be that many people who were successful that late in life. Willie Nelson, I think, was 40 when he had any real commercial success, and the same for Bonnie Raitt. But nearly everybody is successful before that. But to have your first real success age 40, astonishing. Don't you think?
It is absolutely amazing. And but didn't do national service. We don't think.
We don't think he did,
because he must have been just too young for national service. Whereas Bill Wyman is that couple of years older.
Yeah.
And did national service. But it's the idea. I'm also interested in the idea that people who had a go at life in one way or another, and then started again as a rock star. And Bill Wyman is like this, because Bill Wyman, he was in the Air Force when he worked in factories. He was in the Air Force. He got married, had a child, and then thought, nah, I'm gonna
give one more roll of the dice.
I'm going to join a group.
I'm going to join these guys, even though I'm 7 years older than he or whatever. And got him because he had a van. Exactly.
But Jet Black was in the he was in the equipment hire business, wasn't he? Or the rehearsal space and so forth.
Yeah.
That's how he met it was a nice classic case of older member who's got a van.
Totally that, absolutely.
But
I think his other contribution to the group was that actually he had the most amazingly powerful thuggish presence. Because I think a lot of the Stranglers' appeal then was that they were quite frightening. Don't you think? They just were. I mean, Cornwell was very, very thin and wiry, and he used to have a little leather noose around his neck on stage. And Jean-Jacques Bernal was this very kind of aggressive karate black belt. And wasn't he? You remember?
Yeah.
And he kind of looked like a real bruiser. And Greenfield was just weird and kind of rather distracted and odd looking. And
Greenfield looked. I'm going to interrupt a second. Do you know who Dave Greenfield looked like? Go and check this on the internet. Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh right, that's good.
He looked like Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh great, that's good.
So, that's a further kind of slightly spooky
That is spooky.
Relationship.
Yeah.
And then Jack
But they
Black
fell out. They all fell out very badly. And well, they fell out with Hugh Cornwell, didn't they? And that's obviously it must have been just some kind of personal thing, because money-wise, actually, the Stranglers pretty good. They all had their names on those big hits.
Well,
Golden Brown, all four of them are on that. No More Heroes, three of them.
No, but you know the story of Golden Brown, because Hugh Cornwell told me this, that I put to him my old theory that with any successful group, in the end, it's one song. He said,
song. Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is. It's Golden Brown. And he said that it's split between the four of them. And Jean-Jacques Bonnel gets a quarter of it, even though he refused to play on the record.
He wouldn't play it because he didn't like it.
He thought it was stupid.
And he thought it wouldn't be a hit. He thought it wasn't Stranglers-like. I know, that's...
But I'll take 25%, thank you very much.
For the rest of my life. Thank you
for the rest
very
of
much.
my life.
Yeah.
So yes, so now there are just two, and will there be some reconciliation between Burnell and Cornwell?
Yeah, as Burnell said, Burnell tweeted, he said, the welcoming committee has just doubled, which I thought was rather a sweet way of talking about another member of a four-piece band passing on. But yeah, who knows? Perhaps they will still get back together, the two of them. Unlikely.
This is a junction in the word podcast. It separates that bit from this next bit.
I saw this new film that's out on Netflix, and it's by a documentary maker called Bob Smeaton, who's made films in the past about The Who.
Yes, I know.
English guy, British guy. And it's called Travelling Band Creedence Clearwater Revival at the Royal Albert Hall. And I thought that was really interesting, actually. It's very touching. It's the European tour in 1970 leading up to the Albert Hall gig as the kind of climax. But what really struck me about it was that in 1970, to come to Europe when you're an American, for in their case the first time, and they're in their early 20s, early to mid 20s, they're absolutely just overjoyed and so excited. And every day they get filmed, and they're in Paris, and they've been to see Versailles, and they've been to the Louvre, and they've got their cameras round their necks, and they're talking about the exciting food and the drink and the places. I mean, it's just because the whole thing is just novel. It's really interesting. And then they're in Paris, and then they're in Amsterdam, and then they're in Brussels or whatever. So that thrill, it reminded me that, at that time, you didn't ever get to meet that many Australians. There wasn't that kind of total cultural exchange. I remember meeting Australians in around 1970, the early 70s, and thinking there was these kind of exotic aliens, And I thought it was very interesting. And John Fogerty sees none of this because he's permanently in his hotel room, presumably doing press and promotion. And which I think is a warning that things will eventually go wrong. And then there's the conjecture in the film that they are, at this moment, when they play the Albert Hall, which is 4 days after the official announcement that the Beatles were split up, they are pretty much the biggest band in the world. I thought that was quite interesting, because they probably were. I mean, the contenders would have been who? The Stones? Led Zeppelin?
Well, Stones probably not that active at that point.
No, not really. Not 1970.
Well, no, let me think. Yeah, it's before Sticky Fingers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they were huge because they were the sound of the radio. Whatever you turned on. Creedence Clearwater Revival, because it was just hit after hit after hit, and everybody liked Creedence Clearwater Revival. Students liked them, kids in ballrooms liked them. People at rock festivals liked them. People didn't really know very much about them. I don't think they had very much attachment to them as personalities.
No, I don't think they did.
They just had this rough idea of kind of plaid shirts and
shirts and the whole romantic image of the kind of F. Scott Fitzgerald southern part of America. And it struck me that actually we're a group to try and do that now, a group from San Francisco, kind of transporting themselves creatively entirely to the South and writing these romantic, completely fictional songs about the virtues of the South. They kind of got away. We all thought they were from the Deep South, didn't we? And I don't think
we thought they were connected with river boats, weren't they? And buying.
Yeah, I think you would be exposed as being fraudulent, actually, if that happened.
Possibly.
But I thought, and also I thought such an extraordinary story. There's a lot of the history stuff which I've forgotten, that Tommy Fogerty, his elder brother, John's elder brother, was the leader of the group originally.
It was his band.
Tommy Fogerty and the Blue Velvets. And then there was this switch around, and so you can see all that tension and that resentment building up when suddenly they become successful. So he's grateful for his brother's success and his songwriting, but incredibly jealous of what he's achieved. And they are such good songs. The opening lines of some of those songs: 737 coming out of the sky. Won't you take me down to Memphis for a midnight ride? Right. But that's just a lovely, lovely line, isn't it?
It's funny you saying that thing about there was less international exchange in those days, and clearly that's the case. And I went to see Creedence Clearwater Revival at the Albert Hall on that tour, and I'm just thinking, and I would have been 20 years old or something.
Wow, probably the night that they filmed, were they?
I do not think I had met an American person in real life at that point.
Quite possible.
I don't think I had.
Well, I hadn't till I hitchhiked around Europe in 1972, I think.
So you
and that's the first time I met an American, and I brought 2 Americans back to stay at my parents' house. They were, again, considered to be wildly exotic. People came round to just sit and listen to them talk. One was called Terry. He was known as the Young Buck. Terry, the Young Buck Ryan, with long hair and a big motorbike. The other was a girl called Annie, who had kind of an amazing denim skirt made out of an old pair of denim trousers with a kind of V-shaped bit sewn into it, and had an acoustic guitar and played Joni Mitchell songs. It was just so funny. And people came around and said, "Have you heard? The Allan House got some Americans."
You may not have seen the wonderful comedy series Derry Girls, set in Londonderry.
No, I haven't. No.
It's absolutely fantastic. These girls, Roman Catholic backgrounds during the Troubles,
Yeah.
But it's very, very funny. And at one stage, they have visitors from Eastern Europe. I think they're Russians or Ukrainians. I can't remember which. But they've got one allotted to them as a kind of, staying under their roof and so forth.
Yeah.
And they argue about, can I have a go with him next? Which is a wonderful way of putting it. You've had enough turns. I want to have a go with him. I want him to be my friend. So it was like that. That if you got a person from overseas in those days, it was quite rare.
Oh, it really was.
There was real kudos attached to it. So I'd seen American groups on numerous occasions long before I'd ever met an American.
Yeah.
In real life.
Yeah. And when you saw people like Bob Dylan being interviewed, I always felt he was so weird. He was so un-British. The things he said, his mannerisms, his clothes, the way he expressed himself, the way he thought, everything was it was so exciting. And your entire idea of America was entirely based on what you've seen in films and what you read in books. So it was
entirely. So this week, what have we been doing? We talked to Danny Baker this week about his upcoming tour for Word Down Your Way. We also talked to him about he is getting rid of the records. He's serious about this.
Yeah, he said he got 14,000 albums. Well, he's semi-retired. He claims he's retiring, isn't he? He's winding down the act. I think he's going to kind of eventually get rid of the big house in Blackheath. And he claims he's going to, I don't know what he's going to do, sit in a deck chair and read P.G. Wodehouse. I really don't know. But he's getting rid of 14,000 albums and keeping only 150.
Only 150.
And we asked him about some of the records that he was going to keep. One of which had been previously owned by Barbara Streisand.
The first one that came to mind was Loggins and Messina.
Loggins and Messina. I just couldn't.
I love the idea of that I'm going to pick the records that I'll die in a ditch with. What's it to be? Television's Marquee Moon? No. Loggins and
Messina. I know. Incredible.
Oh, it's very good. And so it made me, look at my records last night, and I think, well, I don't think I'm ever going to get rid of mine. I don't think mine would. I'm sure Danny's would fetch a fortune, because he's got an awful lot of those.
Well, he's got a lot of white labels and all sorts of.
Well, yeah, but I don't, I don't have that kind of thing.
Yeah,
well, I got a few white labels, but so I couldn't retire on selling my records at all. And so I think they're going to be here, They'll be here when I'm carried out feet first. They'll still be here. They're, not including a log into Messina.
Will have them shoveled into a skip. Thank God we got rid of these.
Yeah. So we're talking about something I meant to talk about last week, actually. Talking about people, the last hurrah, various things. Elton John is supposed to be playing his final ever concert at Glastonbury next year, isn't he?
Can we have that in writing?
That was two questions. That was one of my questions was, is he really? Is that really going to be Elton John's last show? Come to that in a second. And the second question is, if it is Elton John's final show, what's his final song? Over to you, Mark Ellen.
Oh, Lord.
Is it?
I'm Still Standing. Your song.
Can't be I'm Still Standing.
No, I think it's quite a funny way to go out, actually.
Finish with
no,
I'm
you
Still
can't.
Standing.
It'll be your song. It'll be yours. It would be Candle in the Wind. Oh, Lord.
No, it can't be your song. It can't be.
Tiny Dancer? No.
It's Tiny Dancer, actually. I think it's Tiny Dancer.
Yeah.
Which is a classic example of how the past is constantly being reshuffled, isn't it?
Yeah.
In popular music. Because Tiny Dancer meant nothing
until
Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not that long ago, is it, really?
No, it's not. It's a very significant scene. They're in the plane, aren't they? And they're in the turbulence. They think the plane's going to crash.
They're going to die.
And they all start confessing things about their lives because they think this is their
Somebody
last
goes,
chance.
I'm gay. Yeah.
They go, oh, no. And suddenly the plane straightens out again and there's a terrible silence, It's extraordinary. Yeah, but that made that song.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was always quite bigger in America. I think it probably had been a hit in America. But I think... I'm not convinced that is Elton John's final show because
can't possibly be.
He can't stop.
He can't.
He's utterly addicted. And
because what will happen is he'll say that's my final show, and then he'll do something small scale.
He will,
and then that'll just start getting bigger and bigger. What he means he's going to bow out in front of 200,000 people. That's fine. He'll do something small scale, and he'll just get the urge to carry on. He will not.
So talking of remixing the past and about how things from the past keep swimming back into focus, I just noticed that there's a 40th anniversary reissue of an album with additional tracks, of an album that I thought I was the only person to actually have. And I think it's absolutely fascinating how even really obscure records are being kind of spotlit and celebrated in 40th anniversary reissue versions. I'm talking about the first album by Marshall Crenshaw.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, which is a good record.
Yes, he was a big deal at the time, Marshall Crenshaw.
I don't think you know, but that's my point. Never a big deal.
Well, he was in the Melody Maker world, wasn't he? Okay. No, not in the real world.
Never.
In the rock press world.
If Marshall Crenshaw had been playing in the pub at the bottom of your road, there wouldn't have been many people turning up.
Well, no, but there were various critics who wrote very fondly about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was considered to be a bit conventional at the time, wasn't he?
But 40 years later,
yeah,
there's a special souvenir version. I'm also looking at, in front of me, I couldn't believe this, I just saw it earlier this afternoon, was that a woman called Victoria Begsman, who performs under the name of Taken by Trees, has done a homage to Colin Blunstone's album 1 Year from 1972.
Boy, that's obscure, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's the great Colin Blunstone from the Zombies.
And listen, Colin Blunstone, wonderful artist and made some really good records, had one hit in this country, I think I'm right in saying. I don't believe in miracles. And never really had a big album or anything. And there he is, all those years later, being celebrated by somebody who clearly wasn't born at the time that was all happening. And the cover of the album has her, mimicking the pose he adopted on the cover of the original record. And it's just absolutely amazing to me. I always feel that people are just desperately flicking through the 70s.
Trying to find something really obscure.
Something.
Yes.
Something that nobody else has had, I'll tell you another thing I saw this afternoon. Again, I got it in front of me. There's a super deluxe edition of the Beach Boys' "Sail On Sailor" just come out. This is 1972, whenever it was. When did Holland come out? 72, probably.
Yeah, around then. Yeah.
They put out Holland, and then there was that record, "Carl and the Passion's So Tough," which got really half-hearted reviews at the time. And everybody said, well, this record's got 2 good tracks. The rest of it's just filler. What do you get all these years later? You don't get 2 tracks. You get the box set.
Get all the outtakes.
You get all the outtakes.
But then
you
again,
get all the live stuff.
But you see, it's about completists, isn't it? Entirely. Because, I've got several friends who are Beatles completists. Which I'm not, thank God, because that would be a ruinous end. But if something comes out, you've got to have it. You can't not have it. You just have to. Otherwise, there's a missing piece in your jigsaw. So there must be a large number of people who just buy absolutely anything.
Well, also, I suppose if you're going to spoil yourself with a kind of box set that you won't play that much.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows that about box sets. You're going to buy it, you're going to play a few tracks, and then you're never going to play it.
You don't ever play it as a record.
You
ever.
never play it
because you've got 4 versions of the same song with minute differences.
And therefore, it kind of helps if the thing is 40, 50 years old, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
Rather than something that came out 5 years ago,
Yeah.
Because it's like you're sort of apologising to the past by throwing money at it, aren't you?
You are.
I didn't buy these records at the time because there was too much going on in my life, or I wasn't born.
I can compensate now.
I can compensate now by spending £200 or whatever it is on some, fabulous version that I'm going to play once, and never again. But I'm going to feel very warm about bringing it home with me and looking at it, looking at the booklets, and which I suppose relates to what we were talking about earlier. That so much of the record experience was about holding something in your hands, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
The Word Podcast, walking the digital dog since 2007.
Any other business? And we're joined by Alex Gold. I've just seen that this is live information, chaps.
Live.
The auction of Fleetwood Mac memorabilia, which is partially in aid of charity, has just taken place in the United States. The biggest item is the wooden balls which dangle from the crotch of Mick Fleetwood on the cover of Rumours, have gone for $128,000.
Wow.
Which is quite something.
That is.
Various other items. A Thea Porter dress worn by Christine McVie on stage in 1971 went for $31,000, which I can kind of understand. It's vintage clothing, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is a market for that kind of thing. The dress she wore on the back cover of Rumours, $56,000. But the thing that surprised me was that where is it here? There's something about bits of onstage equipment like speakers and things. One of her Hammond organ speakers used on tour sold for $37,500.
Wow. That's astonishing.
I can really understand it with a dress because it's the whole thing of the Marilyn Monroe dress, isn't there? And, people actually wearing it and all that.
You could put it in a shop window, couldn't you?
But a
art gallery or whatever.
No, but if you can sell a Fender Stratocaster for £25,000, then why not a speaker cabinet which is part of the Hammond organ instrument? It kind of makes sense in its own way. I think.
God, you're dragging us into the strange world of musicians there. Wow.
Because to play the instrument is fine. That's the song. That's that's the thing. They could have actually written a song on, and you've seen it in videos or whatever. But a speaker is a speaker. Alex.
No, because
isn't it?
No, the speaker is part of the Hammond organ as a unit.
Of course it is, but it's not terribly. It's not a terribly romantic thing, is it?
Well, Alex, I'm glad you mentioned this interest because I've actually got in my garage. I've got some original Ray Charles speaker cabinets from the 1960s, which for the right sum could be yours. And we got some new Patreons, haven't we?
We do, yes, we do indeed. They're going to be piped aboard shortly.
I can't find my pipe.
Oh, we got the pipe.
I used to have a bosun's whistle, which I think David Holly gave me ages ago, and I can't find it. I'll find it for next week. And
it's a thought of the piping that counts.
It's the thought
bring them on. Come on.
Thought of being piped aboard.
And we said we'd give them imaginary jobs.
Give them entertainment names. We give them show business based on the real names. We allot them their place in the showbiz firmament.
Indeed.
So who have we got, Alex? Are you reading them out to us?
Well, these first two patrons are Clubhouse tier patrons. So that's the tier with all the trimmings where you get your own birthday chat, of course.
Absolutely.
An invite to our new biannual do's where we get together and talk about records and such with ale. Paul Brooking is he's the main character in a BBC crime series from the 80s, where he plays a local radio DJ who also solves crimes in Bristol. Okay, wow,
that's good.
Okay, carry on.
Bruce Ian Danton.
I'm thinking he's a crime writer too, isn't he? Bruce Ian Danton.
Oh, right, not horror writer. Actually.
Horror writer.
Latest shocker from Bruce Ian Danton.
Yeah, Bruce Ian Danton. Horror beyond your wildest imaginings.
There.
Blood, gore, guts. That's Bruce. That's Ian, and that's Danton. Yeah, that's the man.
Gore, guts, laughter.
Who else you got?
These are annual patrons. Of course, if you subscribe annually, you get a 15% discount off your year's subscription.
Yeah.
So it's worth doing. Amy Davidson.
What did we decide that Amy was?
You thought she was a female racing driver.
The world's premier female F1 driver.
She's the world's first female Formula One driver.
That's good.
Excellent.
That's good.
Very good.
And the enigmatic Carl the sound guy.
Yes, we decided he did lighting, didn't we?
Good. Yeah. Brilliant to have these people aboard.
It is.
Followed
absolutely
by
very good.
Kirk Schubert.
Was he the missing?
Schubert, I think, was a member of an electronic group in the 1980s.
He was a missing member of Telex. He disappeared during a tour.
Disco.
He disappeared during a tour of the Benelux countries in 1984. Was never heard of again until he signed up as one of our Patreon supporters. Lovely to have you back in the world, Kirk. Yeah. Carry on.
Rich Mills.
Rich Mills, songwriter, I reckon. Was written for Carly Minogue.
No, actually, Rich Mills, perfect. We just put a slash in between the Rich and Mills, and it's a perfect songwriting credit.
It is Rich and Mills.
It's a Rich Mills, another Rich Mills winner. Okay.
Very good.
And last but certainly not least is Steve Dando.
Steve Dando. What did we decide about Steve Dando? Was he the person who gave the name to the legendary folk group?
What were they called?
Dando Shaft.
Dando Shaft.
Back in the years.
He's one of the four Dando brothers who actually were original members of that band, I reckon.
There you go. They've all got their place, but it's lovely to have them all aboard.
So nice to have them. They're very welcome
as Patreon supporters, and very welcome. And why not buy a Patreon subscription for somebody you love this Christmas?
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.